So, how many have you in this room have heard about decentralized finance? Great. How many people in this room have actually used the DeFi products such as Terra or MakerDAO or any other service such as Compound and etc.? Great. We see some hands. So yesterday, we had this great news that Ripple, which is a SF-based startup behind XRP, just acquired payment platform Logos Network to really develop DeFi products. And Vitalik said that DeFi is going to come first. So I think that DeFi is actually the oxygen to this crypto industry lately. So I'm very excited to moderate this session. I'm Shinhye Lee, partner of GBIC, which is a crypto fund based in US, Korea, and China. And we also have a consulting and marketing arm called Block 72. So I want to welcome all the great panelists for today's panel. So let's kick off today's conversation by a brief intro. So can you please explain what kind of DeFi services does your company provide and why that product even matter? Do you want to start?
I mean, I just spoke, so I'll be really brief.
Okay.
Hey guys.
We can skip. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Yu from DXM. We are a subsidiary of Tunamu, which was set up at the beginning of this year. We are engaged in several businesses, of which one is DeFi protocol and service development. We recently launched a service called Trinito, which uses the D.FINE protocol. And I'd like to say we haven't been pushing it aggressively abroad nor domestically, but it is actually the first on-chain decentralized crypto-to-crypto deposit and borrow service, which not only supports ETH, but BTC and XRP as well. We have a few more additional businesses that we're engaged in, but I'll leave the room for Jocelyn.
Hi everyone, I'm Jocelyn. I'm the APAC community lead from MakerDAO. So MakerDAO is actually the creator of DAI, which is also the first decentralized stablecoin built on Ethereum blockchain protocol. So, and we are not just a stablecoin because we are also a permissionless and decentralized lending protocol, allowing anyone to have control over their own assets and generating loans against the assets that they own. So DAI was actually launched in late 2017, and we have actually come a long way. As I think everyone of you might have known, we are also the leader in the DeFi space. So I'm actually very looking forward to actually speak on the panel today. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Barney, and I'm one of the co-founders of the project Vega. Vega is a project to create a completely decentralized protocol for trading of margin derivatives and other products. One of the other unique features of the protocol is the ability to price liquidity and to incentivize people with strong incentives to create new markets.
Great. So we know that this crypto industry follows the trend a lot. Probably you heard STO at the end of last year a lot. You heard the blockchain gaming a lot at the beginning of this year. And now we start hearing a lot of DeFi everywhere. So do you guys really think that DeFi is just changing anything fundamental in this industry, or it's just another buzzword? And to not make it just a simple buzzword, what do you think that we need to see from service provider like you guys?
I mean, I have a lot to say about DeFi. I think, so one thing that I don't understand.
I know that you have a lot to say.
Yeah, so one thing that is absolutely confusing to me is that in a traditional lending market, it's basically a two-sided market between the borrowers and the lenders, right? But with DeFi, you add a complex third party here, which is basically appetite for margin trading crypto, right? Because a lot of DeFi participants draw a comparison with taking a loan or a mortgage on your house, for instance. But it's fundamentally different, right? So with a house, there's high friction in order to acquire like new capital. Like you don't want to move out of your house or so, some sense. But if you take away like basically capital gains taxes for crypto in the US, there's actually no reason to take out CDPs or like loans based on your crypto collateral, right? So like I actually don't understand how this is sustainable, right? And like furthermore, if you think about it, like all the interest rates should converge to the federal funds rate based on how much additional risk that you take. But presumably, like if your position is more than 100% collateralized, it's basically a risk-free investment. So the idea that you can get A+ interest on something like that is absolutely scammy in my opinion.
Well, I think that we can step back a little bit, and I think everyone has different definition of DeFi actually. So I think like though when you say DeFi, I think you're looking into kind of standard definition of DeFi, where a lot of people think it's just like lending and borrow. But even just like the fintech and DeFi, if you look at it, there are just many aspects. It can be payment, it can be lending, it can be STO, it can be issuance platform. So, but do you still preserve your opinion on DeFi if you think about DeFi as a more broader definition?
So when I was talking about DeFi, I was just talking about the standard buzzword definition that most people are talking about.
That's
so
what I figured. So.
basically, the 8% interest on an over-collateralized position doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah. But what do you think about payment as you do, or any other aspects of DeFi?
Oh, it's absolutely interesting. But
Cool.
Well, I think Do just mentioned one subsegment of the whole DeFi group, and one of that is lending, obviously. And maybe if I could answer to his questions, I don't think it's a definite answer, but maybe the reason why the so-called interest rates are so high, it's because it's pretty illiquid at this moment, and conversion to maybe fiat money is not that easy as of now. And maybe, if you think of weighted average cost of capital and the risk side, maybe that factors in, and the numbers right now are currently a little high from your point of view. I agree with that, but it's still at its very nascent stage. And I'd really like to emphasize the fact that people have been asking us, when will mass adoption come for DeFi? But I think it's going a little too ahead. It's kind of rushing ahead because this just started. So I think I'd like to answer that by saying the true beauty of DeFi, for example, is maybe transparency. And it doesn't actually give equal opportunity to every single person out there, but the true beauty lies in the fact that within a predefined set of minimum rules, it won't rule you out because you're maybe a millionaire or maybe you don't have money. It lowers the minimum barrier.
But this is actually what bugs me the most about DeFi lending markets, right? So basically the narrative, sort of the mission statement, if you will, is about extending opportunity, about bringing credit to areas in which it doesn't currently exist. But to be honest, like no poor person in Indonesia is going to collateralize their Bitcoin to take out a loan, right? That's just not going to happen, right? So basically the interesting opportunity for DeFi is social attestation and things like credit-based lending. It's not collateralizing crypto that doesn't exist in the developing world that much today. Right? As I said, because it is fundamentally overcapitalized, the idea that you should take that much over collateral in your position to be able to take out a loan is usurious at best.
So back to differ on that. See, like I said, MakerDAO is just not a stablecoin and a social lending protocol, right? And DeFi lending protocol makes a big pie of the whole entire DeFi space. So we are working with an Indonesian wallet partner based out of Indonesia. So what they essentially built is the first layer application on top of Maker protocol to enable value transfers via DAI, and of course to provide loans and issuance of interest of DAI deposits in this web wallet. So because in developing countries, a lot of villages and also tier 2, tier 3 cities out of tier 1 cities in Indonesia, they do not have access to existing financial infrastructure, for example, banking branches. Right. So it's very difficult for traditional merchants to actually get loans. So with web-enabled devices like this to enable value transfers, among all these different merchants, I actually see that there is a lot of potential there for DeFi to grow within just developing nations.
So how many users do you have for that again?
No, so right now they're still piloting the project. So they're piloting the projects with the rural banks in Indonesia outside of tier 1 cities.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we need to understand that this is still a very nascent
Yeah.
market. So, I mean, I kind of continue. I want to continue the conversation. So, what are the biggest challenges to maintain the DeFi's growth, you think, Bernie?
Yeah, so I think, and it kind of goes into how you think about the last question as well, which is, in order to understand how to make DeFi successful, I think we need to take a step back and say, what is it we're trying to build here? And when I look at this, I look at it in the same way that in the 1990s and 2000s, we moved communication, we moved information dissemination from offline means to online means. And we're doing the same with money, and we're now trying to do the same with the financial system with DeFi. And I think to look at the things we're building now and say, well, they all look like toys at the moment, to be honest. Some of those toys have really exciting potential sat within them, and some of those toys will end up thrown away and just experiments that don't go anywhere. And I think the key for us to move forward and the challenges that you mentioned are about identifying which of those things really have a nugget of something that's valuable and that actually moves finance forward, not just DeFi and not just the crypto space, but finance in general. It gives us something we didn't have.
Yeah.
And also overcoming the boundaries of how do you grow and scale outside of the crypto world, and also how do you deal with things like regulation and the threats from the incumbent and hugely powerful and hugely wealthy financial industry who may prefer to see something else happen. And if we can overcome those challenges, I think some of those different toys will suddenly turn out to look incredibly powerful and incredibly useful.
Yeah, so I think like though you mentioned like important thing, which is like how many users, mainstream adoption, and Bernie, you also mentioned that how can we bring more people outside of crypto into this world and let them use the DeFi. So, I mean, we understand many people still are challenging that right now the DeFi services are only used by the crypto people, especially ETH enthusiasts. They want to just get the interest on ETH they own. And we understand that it is still a challenge. So my question to you guys is, how can we grow the pie? What kind of strategies do you guys have to grow the pie and invite more people outside of the crypto world to use DeFi? I mean, Jocelyn, you mentioned some of the initiative that your company does in Indonesia, but do you guys have any other strategy?
Yeah, so we do. I mean, like MakerDAO has got a very big focus on financial inclusion. So we work very closely with big institutions that align with the UN's Sustainable Development Goal. So in Latin America, we have a team there basically introducing DAI via an exposed machine called PunDX, I think. One of the guys is actually here. So we actually deployed 800 devices in Latin America, not just limited to Venezuela and Argentina, allowing people to actually use DAI. So, I mean, DAI is pegged to US dollars, right? So Argentinians can actually use DAI as the dollar savings account instead of using Argentinian pesos. Because for the past 1 year, Argentina actually suffers about 50% hyperinflation. And if you move to the neighbor, like Venezuela, it's even worse. It's like 1 million times. So, I mean, there's a lot of good use cases in the developing nations. But when you look at, say, the global financial ecosystem, there's the existing market size for traditional financial tools it's really huge, But the thing is, these traditional existing banking services are not addressing or they fail to address the unbanked people in the developing nations. And we are talking about 1.7 billion people. So according to the UN, 1.7 billion people are actually being shut out of the global financial system today. And World Bank actually said that with stablecoins, I mean not just stablecoins, it might actually help to mobilize 380 billion in untapped capital. So there's a lot of opportunities there, when DeFi applications start, getting tractions in the untapped in the developing nations.
Yeah, I mean, banking the unbanked people. We heard a lot of it, but we really want to see the real use cases. And I feel like Do has something to comment or want to share some of the strategy. Because he's like laughing right next to me.
But I think like, honesty is super important here, right? It's not realistic to expect an Argentinian to lock up $150 worth of crypto, which might collapse at any moment.
So
again, we're not talking about CDP here. Sorry. Sorry. So we're not talking about CDP here, generating loans against the assets like Ethereum, that they hold. Right. But instead, they can trade like DAI as a stable coin. They can spend DAI at like mom and pop shops, that accept DAI through like exposed device.
Why would they do that? They can just use the dollar.
Yeah, because the thing is they can't use Argentinian pesos.
Yeah, but they can use the dollar, right? Why would they use DAI?
Yeah, but even...
Yeah, but that's the thing. Even if they use DAI, like, it's just a stablecoin narrative.
Yeah.
Like, with respect to the DeFi movement overall, I think it's disingenuous to say that you're banking the unbanked, like, that's like 1.7 billion people. It's a beautiful story. But it's not realistic to say that you can take over-collateralized loans in the developing world because simply that in reality, that use case doesn't exist today.
Okay, so Do, let's step back. Again, I don't think DeFi is only about the lending, right? Yeah. So we want to focus more a broad concept because again, like the payment is one of the subset of DeFi. Yeah. STO can be one of the subset and stablecoin can be one of the subset of DeFi. So Do, to answer your question, but I think you covered some of that during your presentation. But yeah, like what are you doing to really bring those either 2 billion unbanked people to bank? Or I know it's not what you're doing, but like how you are bringing more people to this DeFi world.
So, I mean, just to close the loop on what I was talking about before, I think there's like pretty interesting use cases that you can build around like decentralized credit and loans and things like that, right? And I think like the beauty of that is social attestation. So the challenge here is that it's really hard to build that kind of trust, social trust on the blockchain. And then it's really hard to bring in participants in the developing world to come into this. But like the interesting use case is if like a bunch of people provide social attestation for somebody that needs money, and then they are the ones that get interest rate on it, then that's pretty interesting, right? Because it opens up a new credit market where it didn't exist previously.
Just like the P2P kind of lending?
Yeah, it's kind of like a Grameen Bank or stuff like that. So like microloans in the developing world can be super interesting. But I don't think it should require crypto collateral on the part of the person that doesn't have the money, right? Because if he doesn't have the money, he's not going to have the crypto, right?
Well, the good thing is MakerDAO actually launched the multi-collateral assets.
So
like even like the real estate can be.
So that's what I wanted to actually talk about. So for now, when you actually generate loans against your own assets via CDP, right? It's just Ethereum. But when we launch multi-collateral DAI, we will be opening up to a lot more different diverse asset types, digital asset types, and potentially further down the development roadmap, tokenize real assets as well. For example, tokenize bonds, securities, real estate. Yeah, and actually invoice, and invoices as well. So we did the project with one of the biggest, we did the pilot actually, with one of the biggest trade finance company or existing supply chain company that has got 1.5 million customers globally. So what we did with them was that we actually integrated a DAI credit system on the existing supply chain network. So, trade finance, there is a huge use case because there is about $9 trillion being trapped in the outstanding receivables. For example, if you're small, medium businesses, and the payment term is like 60 days or 90 days, by the time when you receive your payment from your supplier, you'll be gone out of business. So I think the use case here is that we are trying to democratize financing for small, medium businesses by helping small, medium businesses to actually use tokenized invoices as collateral, and in return, getting loan in that.
Interesting.
Yeah. How about you, Eric and Bernie? Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things we have to think about here is there's a 1.7 billion person market for these things, but there's 1.7 billion people are not all going to queue up tomorrow to use it. And,
exactly.
And that's not the space, and that's not the time that this industry is in. And what we have to think about is, Twitter's the same. When Twitter was launched, the people who used Twitter were not the people who were going to use Twitter. They were the people who were the fast followers and the early adopters. And we need to look for those among those 1.7 billion people as well as the rest of the world. And so, whilst I think it's fair that right now people are not going to use crypto collateral in general because the wallets are too hard, the on-ramps are too hard, every news agent doesn't let them put their pesos or whatever into crypto, that might change in future, and that's a world we're aiming to get to. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to look for who are those early adopters and the fast followers, who are those people among those 1.7 billion who have a really strong use case and a desire and an interest to learn and understand the technology, and they can actually say, in the case of Vega, we're thinking about letting people trade derivatives in a peer-to-peer way, and we're thinking about maybe the small importer or exporter who has a dependency on another currency. Maybe they'd like to hedge that dependency, but they don't have the kind of banking connections and ability to do so. So how do we reach those people, make it as easy as possible, and find the ones among those who are interested enough to learn and to maybe jump through one or two hoops for the first year or so and get started and show their friends how this works. And as people start to see the value and demonstrate it, and as people start to use it, they'll tell others, and it'll seem less scary and much easier to sign up. But also, the governments and the big institutions will start to take notice, and they will start to make it easier for people, and they'll start to remove some of the roadblocks too. And I think we have to take that step-by-step approach to getting those people on board, rather than just saying, well, these 1.7 billion people aren't all going to use it tomorrow, so we might as well give up.
Eric, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I don't think it's something that we can do alone. It's definitely impossible. So we're looking for different partners in several aspects to actually broaden that use case and largen that scope where DeFi reaches out to other people. And I think Tara is one of the potential partners we're talking about. And what I want to, we launched this service like 2 months ago. We've never promoted it domestically nor internationally. But numbers are pretty much at the early stage, so it must be irrelevant as of now. But then we're actually very surprised because people from over 50 countries actually visited our site. And I think.
Do you know how they reached your website?
I don't know. We have no idea.
Viral?
Maybe MakerDAO helped us. I don't know. So it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing.
Right.
So it's like you won't be able to reach the mass at once, but it's gonna take time. But like you said, bank the unbanked. I don't know. Maybe reach the unreached. And Do said, who would be actually willing to collateralize crypto assets? There are actually tons of people doing that because they don't have access to a dollar, or maybe because they don't have bank accounts. It's like it sounds
it's simply better
it sounds irrational.
Than USD.
I come from traditional finance, so the fact of over collateralization really seems very irrational and a misuse of capital allocation. But things take time and.
Right. So, Eric, you mentioned that you are coming from the traditional finance world. So, we know that I personally think that the goal of DeFi is kind of restructuring the existing financial system in a more open and permissionless way. But again, there are still many challenges that we are currently faced. So, my question is, what are the biggest advantages of DeFi over existing financial system or services? And what would take for DeFi to start really challenge mainstream finance world?
Yeah, so I think we've talked about one of the big advantages I think already, which is around the ability to reach everyone everywhere, and that's not to be ignored. But I think there are some other really fundamental advantages, and two I'd like to focus on. The first one is the idea that you can remove the middlemen. And if you're a trader, and I come from traditional finance and I worked with traders in the biggest investment banks, they get a pretty good price, they get very efficient execution. The further you get from them, the more layers of brokers and bankers and other people just taking their cut you get, so that if you're someone with a small business or a medium business, you're paying far too much to access these markets to these middlemen. And so the ability to remove the middlemen, to connect people directly to the products, the capital, the assets that they want, and do that in a completely open way is really, really valuable and will actually make for much more efficient trading, much more efficient finance itself, and much lower cost. The other one that I think is super important is what you'd call permissionless innovation. And that's the idea that actually if you put all the decision making about what assets to issue, what to make tradable, what products to create, if you put that all in some towers in New York and Hong Kong and London and Singapore, and you say to these guys, like, you make all the products, you make those decisions, they'll make good decisions for them, but they won't make good decisions for the other, like, 7 point whatever billion people on Earth, because they can't even see what most of those people's problems and challenges are. So the other advantages of spreading this out and democratizing it is that individuals around the world and companies around the world can see the needs that they have in the locations that they have, in the industries that they are intimately aware of and they understand, and they can design and build assets and products that really work for them. And so that innovation will mean that instead of everything getting created in those big cities, around the world, people are creating the products and the instruments and things that they need and trading it with the other people who need those too.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Can you think of a way to do that, like, while being compliant? So, like, one of the interesting things that I think DeFi could be applicable for is sort of, breaking down borders in finance, right? So, it's basically like the only thing that's creating differences in interest rates between like Europe, Indonesia, Mongolia, Korea, US, is basically capital controls, right? So, can you think of a way to sort of even out the interest rates?
Yeah, so we're actually, the compliance thing is really, really important. And one of the things I think is a fallacy that you get from some parts of the industry is the idea that if we make it impossible for the authorities to see what people are doing, then that's okay, and no one has to obey the rules anymore. It's kind of like, that's not a useful way of looking at it, because if I'm a citizen of Korea or a citizen of the UK or any other country, or if I'm a business that has locations there, then if people find out that I'm breaking their rules, then they pick me up in a van and take me to prison. And I don't want that to happen, and I'm certainly not willing as a normal citizen or as a business owner or whatever to risk that just to get access to a slightly better product. And so it's really important that we solve this. And the way we think of it is, in a decentralized system where there is no central authority, it's on everyone to obey their own local rules, but the system can provide tools that help. And what we're thinking about here is the idea that you can actually get attestation. You can get a cryptographic signature against your pseudonymous public ID that says, I have KYC approval in the UK, or whatever other regulatory approval. It could be anywhere on Earth. And the system doesn't actually even need to know what those approvals are. It just knows it's got some signatures. And the cool thing about this is that now one system with one source of liquidity that's global can start to use those things to allow you to add constraints to your actions on the network. And you can say, well, I'm here, and these are all of the things that are my constraints, and I can only trade with other people who meet those. And so you can have a global pool of liquidity and capital, and you can actually route liquidity around that pool in all kinds of ways and connect people via multiple hops. But you can do that while making sure you have a cryptographically provable, verifiable proof that I've never traded with anyone who I can't legally trade with. And I think tools like that will become absolutely essential to open up this kind of DeFi ecosystem to the wider world.
Got it. I want to ask the last question because of the time restriction. So I know that Terra, you had a great partnership that you just shared, and I know that DXM has been preparing a lot of new business. So just to all of you, what's your roadmap and what are you the most excited about next 6 months?
So, like, for me personally, I think the credit loans market is super interesting to us because in terms of the regionality of where our business is focused, I think it can have significant impact. I think, though, the focus around DeFi should focus a little bit towards, having people help each other in some sense. Because I think, like, you might say that sometime in the future this might be possible, but I think it might be easier to have people borrow each other money rather than saying that liquidity constraints prevent you from selling your crypto, therefore crypto collateralized loans are valuable. Because in that case, even if you borrow DAI, you still need to sell it to buy things, right? So I think like having a social attestation tool where other people are putting a collateral for you in exchange for interest is a super interesting model. And I'm excited to see more of those develop over time.
We're actually planning to increase that asset pool within the next 2 quarters with an integration to another bigger platform, which we will announce at that time. And I think that'll be when the bigger asset pool will be, like Kwon said, Do said, much more helpful for all the people who might not know about DeFi, but would like to have it a try.
I mean, I mentioned about multi-collateral DAI. So it will be backed by a lot more different asset types. And then So, like adding real-world tokenized assets to multi-collateral DAI, having that capital flow being unlocked in the traditional market today. So we are pretty excited about that. And then after launching multi-collateral DAI, we'll be pegging DAI to like different national currencies, for example, yen DAI or euro DAI. I see that I'm actually pretty looking forward to see the growth of DeFi space, because we have come a long way. I started working for like MakerDAO about a year ago. I look at DeFi Pulse. At that point of time, at one point of time, we actually locked up about $500 million worth of Ethereum in our smart contracts. So and then compound finance came in and then started locking up about $100 million worth of in the DeFi ecosystem itself. So if you look at the month-on-month growth, it's actually quite astonishing. It might not be like lending protocols, but it could be like synthetics assets platform, trading platforms, or DEXs that are building within the space itself. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super excited at the moment about, obviously for the last sort of year and a half and more, we've been building and designing Vega and sort of working away on it. And in the next month or so, we'll be launching our first private testnet. And I'm really, really excited to get the protocol in the hands of the first members of the community and people. We're also going to be massively expanding our community operations, so we're actually out there talking to people both in the DeFi community, to other projects, to people who might use this, but also to traditional traders and to people who are used to using these kind of products in other settings. And we really want to bring all of those different sides together, and I'm really excited about just understanding how people interact with our protocol and how we can sort of shape it to best serve all of the people who use it.
Great. So according to Microsoft, they say the financial industry is the area where the blockchain can disrupt the most. And I think based on this conversation, we understand it's still a very early stage. At this point, we have about 500 million USD worth of ETH is locked up in smart contract. Still small. We still need to talk about more users, more non-crypto people to come and use the DeFi. But from my personal opinion, everything starts small. 20 years ago, when first the web economy came up, it was really small. But now it is very meaningful, as we all know. So I hope that we will see more different diverse business model within DeFi, not only the collateralized crypto asset. Hope to see that more people start using the DeFi product. So thank you so much for joining the panel, and thank you everyone for listening to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you very much.